Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. We put together a guide with some recommendations to help you focus on being financially fit at different milestones in your life. Some of you may be ahead of schedule, while others may have to play catch up. You can download this guide for free on our website. The link to download Your Path to a Lifetime of Financial Success is listed in the episode description. Or you can go to wiserinvestor.com, scroll to the bottom, and find it there. Now on to today's episode.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast, where we believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Guiding you to financial freedom today are my co-hosts, Brad Lyons and Michaela Dowdy. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hi, Casey.
So we are decked out. If you're not watching in our fancy YouTube channel, we are decked out in our red, white, and blue. I'm in my blue polo with the Go Braves as we enter the playoffs. Michaela's wearing her long-sleeve red T-shirt. Brad's white. He's very neutral today. You got dressed up for the podcast, and we didn't tell you. That's what happened. It's like high school all over again.
I got to use every advantage I have for me. We're good on these.
You have a brace cap. You wore that to the game, right?
I do.
Should have had a brace cap.
It's
Well,
been out many times. And
once this is
appropriate for here.
Once this podcast gets released, we'll already know who the winner is. I assume it's the Braves in this series, but we'll see. Hopefully. It's going to be hard to work today. You have to have us on all the TVs. Might be more encouraging than CNBC these days.
That's true.
So we're going to stick to our theme, planning in your insert blank. We've made it out of our 20s. We're in our 30s. And we got some big life events coming up in our 30s. Typically, we're having babies. We're buying houses. What else we do in our 30s? Trying to remember.
You're way too early for that.
I know, right?
I may have that problem.
I know. 30s wasn't that long ago for me. Yeah, we got to tell Michaela what to expect.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Or my wise old owls. Perched on the tree.
Yes. Thank you, Michaela. I appreciate that.
It'll be do as I say, not as we do.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. So, big thing is, we talked about in the 20s, setting a budget. It's updating your budget. Your 20s, hopefully you've spent that time investing in your career. In your 30s, maybe you're starting to see some of that come to fruition. Big thing is this is the time where you should be making more money than you did in your 20s, and you really need to start accelerating that savings rate. Before we said 10% or get out of debt, but when you hit in your 30s, I'd say at least 15%. If you can be maxing out, that's great. I don't know though. I mean, partially too, I feel like in today's age, 30-year-olds are still living at home. I read these stories in the paper, and I'm like, you're 35 and you're still living at home. I don't understand. But yeah, so you want to keep trying to save more. Another thing too is as you move into home ownership, you also have more assets. You need to start looking at your property and casualty. It's no longer the cheapest insurance you can get. It's having proper coverage. At this point,
the savings part should be just kind of a natural transition, because as we talked about in prior podcasts, in our 20s, we're asking people to, as you get raises each year,
increase your percent.
Increase the percent of savings. And so by the time you get into your 30s, you should be saving 10, 12, 13, 14% already. And so that's just kind of a natural transition into 30s saving, or we're trying to get you to max out in all aspects of your retirement savings plan. So it's also already baked into the budget. Okay.
It's also time to grow up.
A little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you got to stop doing stupid stuff with your money. Time you get
Stop
in your 30s.
Listening to friends on the couch.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But also just being mature in how you're investing. You probably have dabbled in individual stocks by now. Crypto can be a part of your long-term growth for sure, but everything in crypto doesn't make any sense. And we see 20-year-olds all the time that are just dabbling in crypto or individual securities.
Well, no more than all of it invested in any one asset class.
Yeah, that's very true. Except for the S&P 500.
Yeah. Well, that's, 500 companies.
True.
Yeah.
That's true. Yes. So yeah. And if you're in your 30s now, you have a stock market that could take you back to your 20s. We've fallen so much from the peak.
This is an opportunity.
It is. It's a
Yeah.
time machine,
Yeah.
right? You
It
just
is.
didn't. You just didn't go back in time. Your portfolio did.
And we're still looking at a 30-year plus time frame for
Absolutely.
that money to be invested. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Or if you didn't save anything, let's say that you just goofed off in your 20s and now all of a sudden you're married to the spouse of your dreams and you're trying to get things back on track and, go back to the basics. Eliminate stupid debt. We don't need to have credit cards at 29% interest,
True.
right?
Mhm.
Those points aren't worth it. It's better just to buy the airplane ticket. Right?
When you can afford to pay for it.
When you can afford to pay for the airplane ticket. That's right. And then the next thing is getting your emergency reserve set up.
Which should increase at this point in time because your needs have increased, your expenditures have increased if you're into the home buying years, and
Yep.
automobiles and savings and children and so on. So that emergency reserve needs to grow with your life.
Yep. You know what your friends are doing though? Your friends are not thinking about emergency reserve and savings. They're not thinking about saving for retirement. They're taking that extra money and they're buying other nice things with it. And so I think going back to any age really, but especially in your 20s and 30s, stop comparing yourself to other people. Stay in your lane, do your thing, do what's best for you, do what makes sense for you. Most people that you see that look like they have a lot of stuff, they're doing well, are broke. They're broke.
It's okay to compare, but you compare yourself versus your future you,
Right.
who you want to be 10 years out. Compare yourself to that person. And are you set financially to become that person 10 years out?
Yeah.
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 So-
There's you think about some country clubs in the area. We don't have a whole lot of clients in those country clubs. You know why? Every single penny that comes in goes right back out.
Yeah.
They have a big house. They play lots of golf. They have a good lifestyle for now, but if that job stopped, they'd be in trouble. House would be on fire sale.
Yeah.
So it's not what you see on the outside. We've talked about this before, but those are just rich people. You want to be wealthy.
Yes.
Right. Two very different things, right?
Yes. No, they are for sure. Because I feel like you really have to realize that your money is going further. And I think something you were just saying is like you have to be smart with your money as far as like smarter with making sure you're making wiser decisions. And it's one of those things where I feel like in your 30s, you're no longer contributing to, I'm just providing for myself. It's like we're saying, like you have a family now. Your money has to also be contributing to your family. So your responsibilities are larger. So you can't be investing like you were and taking on the risks like you were maybe when you were 20, investing in those like crypto things that we don't, or even like largely, or if you're investing in just one asset class, like that's just not smart and wise decision making for your family. And even if you're not, investing for your savings or things like that, that's not putting your family in a smart financial decision or position. And so it's one of those things where that's where I feel like is really where your 30s are. I don't know, but I would assume is where kind of life hits the fan a little bit, is that you really have to.
Well, certainly things start getting chaotic because there's more things going on.
Right.
Kids are getting old enough to have activities, and there's no longer just you and a spouse. It's now you, spouse, and other people that you're responsible for. I think as a man, that's when the burden starts kind of piling up for most men. The burden starts piling up, and that, man, I got to provide for this family. I have to make sure I'm doing the right thing. We talk to people in their early 30s.
Well, it becomes very real in your 30s.
That's right.
What's interesting is that it also in the 30s, what happens, you begin to realize I've already been working for 10 or 15 years now, and hopefully, as we sit here and talk, you've built up some assets and you begin to see the fruition of that savings and somewhat sacrifice in your 20s and so on. But if you haven't, then it becomes kind of frustrating.
Right.
It's time to right the ship. It's time to get back on board with, all right, go back to the basics, as you mentioned, Casey. Start saving for, paying off stupid debt. Let's build up an emergency reserve. Let's say what happened in the past is in the past. Let's get started right here and now.
What's that movement and young people now that want to be retired by 40 or 45. There's a name for it. Have you guys heard of this?
There's a name. I didn't know there was a name.
I thought that there was a name for it. Maybe there's not, but I thought that there was a. Well, I know there's a group of people who want to be retired by 40. So that means you got to hit 20 up pretty hard.
Yes.
If you're going to do that.
Definitely.
And they don't always need millions, because sometimes they talk about passive income. There is no passive income. I mean, dividends are passive income, I guess, but a rental home is not passive income. I have a vacation rental. There's nothing passive about it.
Yeah.
I got the scars on my hand from cleaning out gutters. But yeah, so if you're on that path and you've done a great job and you say, hey, I want to be done with this work stuff by the time I'm 40, 45, this is the time that you start having to figure out how to get that house paid off, because you've got a decade remaining. So you got to turn that mortgage into a 10-year or less mortgage to hopefully get that eliminated.
And as you're talking, what immediately comes to mind is that there are so many competing needs for those dollars: housing, living, transportation,
shiny objects,
savings, etc. In your 30s, that's when it really comes. In your 20s, the competition for your dollars may or may not be quite as high between competing needs.
Yeah.
You want to have fun, put some money away, and you're doing good. But in your 30s, if you've started a family and you've bought a home, all of a sudden the competition for those dollars means that you've got to be very smart. And that's something that you talked a little bit about, Michaela, is being smart with your money in your 30s. And that's when it really begins. Nothing says growing up like buying life insurance. Life insurance in our 30s, right?
That's a good time to buy it. Something happens when you turn 40 and they charge you a heck of a lot more for it.
That's what I have in my notes here, that life insurance is very inexpensive in our 30s. And if you can lock in that rate for 20, 30 years out, it's a good idea.
Yeah. I locked mine in when I think it was 28. I figured we'd have 3 children and I need $1 million each.
There you go.
No rhyme or reason other than that, but I have a $3 million life insurance policy and I think I pay $80 a month.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Same policy now, probably $800 a month. But no, you start thinking ahead a little bit on some of those things, because you can save a lot of money.
You really can. So it's thinking outside the box as well a little bit.
And by the way, you should never evaluate your life insurance based on how many children you have. I just at the time, financial planning is not what it is right now. So it was really hard to determine needs, and there weren't online calculators, and it was just me versus the salesman. Finally, I settled on 3. But yeah, but even back then, though, that wasn't that long ago. But I remember having to do because that was unusual, I guess, for a 20-year-old to have a $3 million life insurance policy. I remember they had to call me. I had to talk to the underwriter.
Yeah.
And he's like, why do you need $3 million?
Why do you need this much?
I was like,
what are your insurable interests?
I'm just looking at the cost of living, and it seems to me if I die, it's only cost $1 million to raise each child, according to the Wall Street Journal, literally that week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I came up with my number. I think the big thing here is again, it goes back to the theme of don't be looking at others. Stay in your lane. Focus on the future you, and that's going to be a lot of making sure you stay out of debt, because there's just so many things now that are. I see Teslas everywhere. Everywhere I see Teslas. Now they're not all Model S's or the X, but they are certainly not cheap. Right? People are paying $1,200, $1,400 a month. I'm like, isn't it better just to buy a gas car and pay $400 a month? Right?
You would think.
And just buy the gas? Isn't that better?
I think is what, I guess really where Tesla really gets their benefit is that they're trying to, push their environmental agenda of you're not having to buy gas, so then you're, just using electricity, and that's better for the environment.
I don't know, but California, you can't even charge your car
exactly.
right now.
So it's really, they're all starting to kind of crumble a little bit. And then you have the whole issue. People are like, well, what happens when the batteries go bad? What are you doing with the batteries?
Right.
Because those have to be I
think it's just a cool factor.
Yeah.
Because if you really just want an electric car, you would have bought the Nissan Leaf.
Yeah.
And there's nothing cool about Nissan Leaf, but for a while it was free, right? With the tax
we're in a
credits.
state of transition here. We're looking at, people wanting to move into electrical cars. Other people are going to stay with their gas-powered cars. We're going to live with both for a while.
Well, I would say we'll be all electric eventually, and nobody will be able to go anywhere because we can't charge our cars. I saw this picture of some guy driving down the road in the middle of Texas. I guess he was concerned about no charging station, and on the back of his Tesla, he had a generator on a rack.
Oh my God.
Like a bumper rack, or a hitch rack. So he had a generator. I'm like, that's kind of an oxymoron. But this is not a car show. So my point was that it's a flashy object. So you have to be careful with flashy objects. You do need to go and experience and do things. We're not saying that at all. Stop doing that at all. We're just saying, hey, just be realistic and pay attention, and make sure you're saving and staying out of debt. That's the bottom line. Another thing is like estate planning. So we meet with a lot of people in their mid-30s who haven't done any estate planning. So they don't have a will, they don't have a power of attorney, don't have medical directives. And you have a family, you owe it to them to have those basic documents established. It's real simple. And I'm not a big proponent of LegalZoom, but certainly, getting with a local attorney in your area and just putting together the very basics: will, power of attorney, medical directive. If you're in a more rural area, you might be able to find this to be done fairly cheap. My mom's down in Hilton Head now, and I found a place down there for her, and for $500 they did a will, power of attorney, and medical directive. I wish that lady lived up here in Atlanta because I would send her a ton of business. It's not quite that cheap up here, but basically, those are things that you need to have accomplished. What are some things that we see 30-somethings have the biggest issues with in relation to money?
Coming out of your 20s and going into your 30s, it's one of the biggest issues is, adjusting your behavior, okay? Knowing that as you're taking on more responsibility in life and with family issues is to adjust your spending to match your income and your objectives. And it's that transition that we notice that people either make or they don't make. And if they do make, they tend to be successful with their finances. If they don't make it, we'll find that by the end of their 30s and going into their 40s, they probably are still spending like they were in their 20s, very much in debt, living a very high lifestyle, but have realized, that, I've been working now for 20 years and I don't have 2 dimes to rub together.
Right.
Yeah. So it's making that transition to matching your goals, your income, and your expenditures all together.
I think too, it kind of goes back to career. Like you should be settling in on a career. If you hate your job, then maybe you need to find something different to do, because at this point you're realizing that you're gonna be doing this job for a long time, right? Another 30 years. So we should be at this point kind of pivoting to something that we want to do long term, and what your career aspirations are. I understand that some people just go and they work a job and this is their job, but we spend so much time at where we work that it really you need to find joy in it. And it's not always roses. I mean, obviously I've been doing this for a long time, but there's things I don't like about running a financial planning company, but there's also things that are very rewarding about it. For me, it's helping people, because I know that we have ultra high net worth people here, but occasionally we see people who just need help, and we rally around them and we help them, and that's very rewarding. But not everyone gets that in their careers, right?
Right.
I mean, we've had some very wealthy people here that absolutely hate their jobs, and that stinks, because you spend majority of your time in that job, which is why we stay out of debt. It all goes back in circles, right? If you didn't have any debt payments, then you have the flexibility to then go out and do whatever it is you want to do, or maybe take a less paying job that you enjoy, right? So there's all kinds of options. So just don't get yourself in a position where you're stuck, especially when you get into your 40s and 50s, because then you really are stuck. You're going to have to keep doing that for a long time. And trying to save money in order to even make it to retirement. Biggest issues with money, I'll get back to that question. Living paycheck to paycheck, we see that a lot, and people in their 30s just struggling, not saving enough for retirement, not even participating in retirement. Statistically, most people don't. I mean, obviously everyone here that comes in here does. Or we see the top of the pyramid, I guess, as far as decision making. Being underinsured, that's a real thing. We already mentioned that. I think it's just not understanding money still. Like, we should understand money by now. We have a great episode, 124, financial literacy. Take a listen to that episode. It has all the terms that you hear. What is APR? What's APY? Right? We went through those. We probably should update that, actually. Estate planning for young adults. That's actually the episode prior to that, episode 123. We talked to a gentleman out of Ohio on why his young adults should have estate planning done. That's an important episode too. And then obviously the one that kicked us off, episode 129, how financial planning looks different every decade. So if you want kind of an overview of 20s, 30s through 60s, then that's a good one to listen to. Also, don't forget we have a YouTube channel, A Wiser Retirement on YouTube. We have one called How to Be a Long-Term Investor. It's a really short video. That we need that today because there's so many scary things that appear to be happening in the marketplace, but you just have to keep focusing long-term. Also, using an online estate planning service versus a local attorney. We have an opinion on that. You can also find that on our YouTube channel. All those will be linked in our show notes here for the podcast. And also, if you have a minute, take a minute to rate our podcast. We'd appreciate any feedback we have on the Apple podcast ecosystem. Appreciate that. All right, guys. Any other wisdom for people in their 30s?
Enjoy them. Do what you need to do, and then simply enjoy them. And go by fast.
It did go by fast. I feel like my 30s, though, were an extension of my 20s. I really felt like it was all the same. Yeah, it wasn't until 40 that I started going, okay, things are a little different. When you wake up and something aches for no reason. That's you're like, okay. Great chat. Talk to you guys later.
Great.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, that way you don't miss any new episodes. We would also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. We would love to hear from you. This episode was produced and edited by Lilton Moore.